possibly live on the best farm in the world. You know, it's a great place to wake up in the morning and great place in the evening. Every day there's something new.
David Fenton took over Lanark from his father John in 2003. To fully appreciate this place, you need to see it how the many birds which live here do. Built wetlands and trees planted for wildlife habitat, sheep shelter and forestry cover a third of the 700 hectare grazing property. 100,000 trees in lines and circles in paddocks and belts and wedges along fences have created a gentler microclimate, vastly different to surrounding farms. But it was almost treeless in 1956 when the late John Fenton inherited it. Exposed to hot, dry summers and cold, windswept winters, it was so grim John's future father-in-law would only bless John's marriage to wife Cicely if John planted trees so Cicely could hear birds. It started a lifelong obsession which became John Fenton's legacy after his death 2 years ago at 85. This is my third visit to Lanark. It's one of my favourite places I've visited in my Landline career. I'm back to see how John's son David is managing this unique place. When David took over Lanark, it was expected he would not only farm it profitably, but be a responsible caretaker of 50 years of his father's environmental work.
I love the word environmentally sustainable. They're probably my two favourite words. I know we've been that now for at least the last 12, 14 years. 23 to 25% of trees on your property doesn't affect the amount of stock that you can run. And that's mainly to do with the ground staying warmer longer, sheltered, there's less battering from the environment, and your stock are happier.
John and now David have shown what can be achieved by balancing farming with the environment. I first met John in 1997. Landcare was just 11 years old, but he'd been following similar principles for 37 years already. In the 50s and 60s, planting trees or spending money on trees was inexplicable. What convinced locals John was potty was when he gave Lanark back its wetlands by putting 60 hectares underwater when district drainage boards were doing the opposite. Locals were dumbfounded. So John, while you were building this wetland, what were other farmers in Victoria doing?
Well, at that time there was a big move to drain wetlands, of course, and district drainage boards, I think they were called. They were draining wetlands with government money. And a few of us knew that that wasn't right.
What did people think of you in the first 10 years that you were here? Were you the...
I didn't care. I don't, and I care a damn sight less now.
John's 100-year farm plan included forestry to gift future generations perpetual and alternative income streams.
What we're planting now in the way of 2 hectares of pines per year, on today's figures, will be worth 2/3 of the wool clip, and then that means you can relieve the pressure on the grazed country.
But John's obsession with planting trees meant farming came second.
I had to lay down the rules a few times and say, I'm sorry, but you're not getting any income from your trees apart from beneficial shelter for animals. And if you don't have your pastures right, there's no point in doing it. And grumpily said, we'll think about it. And I said, no, we won't think, we'll do.
Viewers regularly asked how the Fentons were, so I returned 9 years later in 2006. The good news is the trees are still there. As you can see from these before and after shots, they've just grown taller, fatter and more valuable.
There was a lot of public reaction, Pip. Yeah, Dad received letters from all over Australia and some from around the world.
What do you think resonated with people?
I think probably one man's ambition, one crazy man's ambition.
John was halfway through his 100-year plan. Much had changed. Drought had diminished Lake Sicily, the wetland, and John and Cicely had handed the property to David to run and moved into town.
Is your dream for Lanark the same?
Yeah, long-term sustainability. I believe that Dad was at one extreme, and that was the wrong extreme. I mean, he was too much one way. We had to increase productivity in order to stay on the land, otherwise we were going to lose the farm. And I've lifted productivity to the extent that I'm happy with where we are.
Are you saying that it actually wasn't a really well-functioning or highly productive farm?
No, exactly.
To get Lanark in the black, David replaced old fences, yards and sheds and improved pastures. But the handover was difficult, with John hovering and criticising.
One day he came up to me and he said, you can't do that. I've tried that and it didn't work. And I just turned around to him and said, well, you didn't do it properly. And that's when he started to see that I wasn't going to build everything up and smash all his work that he'd done. I was going to protect it, but I needed to have the productivity at the same time. And he knew that, he just wouldn't admit it.
David also switched from wool to prime lambs and now runs 2,500 Romney Cross ewes. One day, his son Will, who runs a crutching and ewe scanning business, hopes to have the responsibility of looking after Lanark commercially and environmentally.
Far out, there's 3 new sets in here now. There's brand new ones just there as well.
Yeah.
Lambing season saw pastures filled with twins.
That were meant to be sold this year, but...
Yeah. Well, it's worth holding on to them. There's some ripper twins out here.
Yeah, no, it certainly is.
Good mums.
It was Will's father David who made the farm profitable, but it was his grandfather John who created an environmental jewel.
The place is set up and ready to go.
Do you love coming here?
Love it, love it. Wouldn't trade it for anything. This is where we grew up. It's so special. And now, being a bit older and being able to compare it to other places, and with my business, I'm always going to different farms, and there's nothing like it. And there's plenty of people trying to do it, but they're 50, 60 years behind.
Sister Georgia works in shearing sheds. Georgia and Will hadn't seen the old Landline stories, so I brought them with me.
You weren't born and you were a baby.
Just a baby.
So here's your grandpa doing his thing for Landline.
The first day I saw a blue wren here was probably one of the big things.
You look at the evidence that's in that Landline 1, and the place was falling apart.
I'm mind blown. I've never really actually seen much to do with the farm back then.
Locals were dumbfounded.
If it had never been fixed, I suppose, I don't know if the farm would have survived, really.
David's focus on farming has paid off, with productivity doubling in the last 15 years. And it was good to hear David's relationship with his father had softened.
Not long before he died, he did put his hand on my shoulder one day when he was down here and said, you just keep doing what you're doing a great job, which was a nice pat on the back. So.
There are so many great spots on Lanark, but if I had to choose just one, this is my favourite. It was an experiment in alley farming. John Fenton planted rows and rows of trees, each with several species in it, including understory for woodland birds. The protection these trees provide in winter and summer saw an increase in pasture growth and an increase in lamb survivability rates. It's just a great place to be on a windy day like today. Trees are 35% of the paddock, yet stocking rates haven't dropped. The alleys make mustering tricky, but it's the best lambing paddock.
We had 192% lambing in here last year with the twins, so you know you can't fault that, which was the best for 2021. You know, you can hear the wind roaring through the tops, and you know, it's dead still where we're standing. So if we're feeling that, I'm sure the sheep feel it as well.
I wanted to visit the pines. I'd seen them not long after planting, and then 9 years later.
David, how old are these trees?
Around about 30 years old.
And are they ready to harvest?
Oh yeah, they'd be ready to go tomorrow. The thing is working out a strategy to market them.
The oak grove John planted to provide income in 120 years now holds his ashes. David often visits on dusk to drink some red and listen to his father's favourite music.
Looks a bit different.
Yeah, it does now, without the leaves. It still looks beautiful though.
Yeah, it's good all season, but it's always got something to offer. It's quite beautiful.
It's here Will and Georgia get their grandfather's obsession.
The fact that he was able to have this picture in his mind and go totally against the grain at the time, yeah, it's amazing. Like, how did he? Who has that kind of foresight?
Neither generation has the desire to ever fell the oaks.
Like Will said before, it's a signature, and it's important that it stays here as a monument to him.
David is thankful for what his father taught him about trees.
It's just endless what they give you. I mean, they just keep giving and giving their whole life.
And for what his father did. He put the water back, he brought the birds back, and transformed the property. John Fenton was difficult, driven, and had his own way of doing things. But in many ways, he was a man before his time.
He never said, well, this is me, look what I've done. He just went, you know, when you guys left and when Landline program finished, he'd just go back doing what he did, plant bloody trees.